Good morning. Yes, my voice is deep. That is because I 100% just crawled out of bed. Like, I got out of bed and went, oh my god, I overslept by an hour. I don't know what I did. I don't know if I didn't set my alarm. I don't know if I hit a button on my alarm and didn't realize it. But I overslept by a whole hour. I still have sleepies in my eyes. My poor dog. I was like, go pee, go pee, go pee. Oh my word, what a way to start a day. I have a go live this morning. Otherwise, I would have been like, whatever. It's no big deal. I'll just be a little late for work. It's not the end of the world. Well, no, I have a goal. I have to put them a simple change live this morning, but I have to do it this morning. So I threw on my socks, kept on my pajamas, my clothes from yesterday, ran down here to do the treadmill, and then when I go upstairs, I'm going to make my coffee. And I'm just going to show you, I will video it, but I'm going to show you how I make coffee in a mad rush when I've got to eat and drink at the same time and go. So forgive me if I stumble over my words. I'm literally, my voice is coming around now, but when I first wake up, I got this deep, sexy, very white voice. Oh. Alright, I sound like a smoker when I wake up, and I'm not a smoker. Alright, you guys, April 14th. Whew. David kills Goliath. 1 Samuel 17, 32 through 51a. Don't worry about this Philistine, David told Saul. I'll go fight him. Don't be ridiculous, Saul replied. There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You're only a boy, and he's been a man of war since his youth. But David persisted. Whew. It's warm down here this morning. But David persisted. I have been taking care of my father's sheep and goats, he said. When a lion or bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do it again to this pagan Philistine too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine. Saul finally consented. All right, go ahead, he said, and may the Lord be with you. Then Saul gave his owner, told ya, I can't read this morning. That's because my eyes are full of sleepies. Then Saul gave David his own armor, a bronze helmet, and a coat of mail. Mail? Like junk magazines and credit card offers? What are they talking about? Mail? I gotta Google that. A coat of mail. David put it on, strapped the sword over it, and took a step or two to see what it was like, for he had never worn such things before. I can't go in these, he protested to Saul. I'm not used to them. So David took them off again. He picked up 5 smooth stones from the stream and put them in the shepherd's bag. Then, armed only with the shepherd's staff and a sling, he started across the valley to fight the Philistine. Goliath walked towards David, with his shield-bearer ahead of him, sneering in contempt at this ruddy-faced boy. Am I a dog, he roared at David, that you come at me with a stick? And he cursed David by the names of his gods. Come over here. I'll give your flesh to the birds of the wild and the wild animals, Goliath yelled. David replied to the Philistine, You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you and cut off your head, and then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is God in Israel. That there is a God in Israel, and everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, but not with sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give it to us. As Goliath moved closer to attack David, David quickly ran out to meet him. Reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking out a stone, he hurled it with his sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in, and Goliath stumbled and fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and a stone, for he had no sword. Then David ran over and pulled Goliath's sword from its sheath. David used it to kill him and cut off his head. Seriously, I want that kind of faith. That's the faith that I want. Is to walk right out to the giant and say, you know what? My God's in charge, not you and your silly sword. I love that. Israel routs, the Philistines. 1 Samuel 17:51b through 58. When the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they turned and ran. The men of Israel and Judah gave a shout of triumph and rushed after the Philistines, chasing them as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron. The bodies of the dead and wounded Philistines were strewn all along the road from Sheraim as far as Gath and Ekron. Then the Israelite army returned and plundered the deserted Philistine camp. David took the Philistine's head to Jerusalem, but he stored the man's army in his own tent. He stored the man's armor in his own tent. As Saul watched David to go out to fight the Philistine, he asked Abner, the commander of his army, "Abner, whose son is this young man?" "I really don't know," Abner declared. "We'll find out who he is," the king told him. As soon as David returned from killing Goliath, Abner brought him to Saul, with the Philistine's head still in his hand. "Tell me about your father, young man," Saul said. And David replied, "His name is Jesse, and we all live in Bethlehem." Saul becomes jealous of David, 1 Samuel 18:1 through 16. After David had finished talking with Saul, he met Jonathan, the king's son. There was an immediate bond between them, for Jonathan loved David. From that day on, Saul kept David with him and wouldn't let him return home. And Jonathan made a solemn pact with David because he loved him as he loved himself. Jonathan sealed the pact by taking off his robe and giving it to David, together with his tunic, sword, bow, and belt. Whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Saul made him a commander over the men of war, an appointment that was welcomed by the people and Saul's officers alike. When the victorious Israelite army was returning home after David had killed the Philistine, women from all the towns of Israel came out to meet King Saul. They sang and danced for joy with tambourines and cymbals. This was their song: "Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s. This made Saul very angry. "What's this?" he said. They credit David with their 10,000s and me with only thousands. Next they'll be making him king." So from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. The very next day, a tormenting spirit from God overwhelmed Saul, and he began to rave in his house like a madman. David was playing the harp, as he did each day, but Saul had a spear in his hand, and he suddenly hurled it at David, intending to pin him to the wall, but David escaped him twice. Saul was then afraid of David, for the Lord was with David and had turned away from Saul. Finally, Saul sent him away, and Saul sent him away and appointed him commander over 1,000 men, and David faithfully led his troops into battle. When Saul recognized this, he became even more afraid of him. But all of Israel and Judah loved David because he was so successful at leading his troops into battle. David marries Saul's daughter, 1 Samuel 18:17 through 30. One day Saul said to David, "I am ready to give you my older daughter Merab as your wife, but first you must prove yourself to be a real warrior by fighting the Lord's battles." For Saul thought, "I'll send him out against the Philistines, and they'll kill him rather than doing it myself. Who am I, and what is my family in Israel, that I should be the king's son-in-law?" David exclaimed. "My father's family is nothing." So when the time came for Saul to give his daughter Merab in marriage to David, he gave her instead to Adriel, a man from Maholah. In the meantime, Saul's daughter Michal had fallen in love with David, and Saul was delighted when he heard about it. "Here's another chance to see him killed by the Philistines," Saul said to himself. But to David he said, "Today you have a second chance to become my son-in-law." Then Saul told his men to say to David, "The king really likes you, and so do we. Why don't you accept the king's offer and become his son-in-law?" When Saul's men said these things to David, he replied, "How can a poor man from a humble family afford a bride price for the daughter of a king?" When Saul's men reported this back to the king, he told them, "Tell David all I want for the bride is all that I want for the bride price is 100 Philistine foreskins." I'm glad we don't have to pay for things with foreskins today. That wouldn't be fun. Vengeance on my enemies is all I really want. But what Saul had in mind was that David would be killed in the fight. David was delighted to accept the offer. Before the time limit expired, he and his men went out and killed 200 Philistines. Then David fulfilled the king's requirement by presenting all of their foreskins to him. So Saul gave his daughter Michal to David to be his wife. When Saul realized that the Lord was with David and how much his daughter Michal loved him, Saul became even more afraid of him, and he remained David's enemy for the rest of his life. Every time the commanders of the Philistines attacked, David was more successful against them than all of the rest of Saul's officers. So David's name became very famous. Saul tries to kill David. 1 Samuel 19, 1-10. Saul now urged his servants and his son Jonathan to assassinate David. But Jonathan, because of his strong affection for David, told him what his father was planning. "Tomorrow morning," he warned him, "you must find a hiding place out in the fields. I'll ask my father to go out there with me, and I'll talk to him about you. Then I'll tell you everything I can find out." The next morning, Jonathan spoke with his father about David, saying many good things about him. "The king must not sin against his servant David," Jonathan said. "He's never done anything to harm you. He has always helped you in any way he could. Have you forgotten about the time he risked his life to kill the Philistine giant and how the Lord brought great victory to all of Israel as a result? You were certainly happy about it then. Why should you murder an innocent man like David? There's no reason for it at all." So Saul listened to Jonathan and vowed, "As surely as the Lord lives, David will not be killed." Afterward, Jonathan called David and told him what had happened. Then he brought David to Saul, and David served in the court as before. War broke out again after that, and David led his troops against the Philistines. He attacked them with such fury that they all ran away. But one day, when Saul was sitting at home with spear in hand, the tormenting spirit from the Lord suddenly came upon him again. As David played his harp, Saul hurled his spear at David, but David dodged out of the way, leaving the spear stuck in the wall. He fled and escaped into the night. Michal saves David's life. 1 Samuel, I wish I knew if I was saying that right. If it's Michelle? Is it Michal? I don't know. 1 Samuel 19, 11-17. Then Saul sent troops to watch David's house. They were told to kill David when he came out the next morning. But Michal, David's wife, warned him, "If you don't escape tonight, you will be dead by morning." So she helped him climb out through a window, and he fled and escaped. Then she took an idol and put it in his bed, covered it with blankets, and put a cushion of goat's hair at its head. When the troops came to arrest David, she told them he was sick and couldn't get out of bed. But Saul sent the troops back to get David. He ordered, "Bring him to me in his bed so I can kill him." But when they came to carry David out of bed, they discovered that it was only an idol in bed with a cushion of goat's hair at its head. "Why have you betrayed me like this and let my enemy escape?" Saul demanded of Michal. I had to," Michal replied. "He threatened to kill me if I didn't help him." Now we're going to jump up to Psalm 59. It says, "For the choir director, a psalm of David regarding the time Saul sent soldiers to watch David's house in order to kill him, to be sung to the tune of 'Do Not Destroy.'" Do you guys all know that catchy tune, "Do Not Destroy"? I don't, so I can't sing it to you. All right. "Rescue me from my enemies, O God. Protect me from those who have come to destroy me. Rescue me from these criminals. Save me from these murderers. They have set an ambush for me. Fierce enemies are out there waiting, Lord. Though I have not sinned or offended them, I have done nothing wrong, yet they prepare to attack me. Wake up, see what is happening, and help me. O Lord, God of heaven's armies and God of Israel, wake up and punish those hostile nations. Show no mercy to the wicked traitors. They come out at night, snarling like vicious dogs as they prowl the streets. Listen to the filth that comes out of their mouths. Their words cut like swords. After all, who can hear us? They sneer. But Lord, you laugh at them. You scoff at the hostile nations. You are my strength. I wait for you to rescue me. For you, O God, are my fortress. In his unfailing love, my God will stand with me. He will let me look down in triumph on all my enemies. I don't kill them, for my people soon forget such lessons. Stagger them with your power and bring them to their knees. O Lord, our shield, because of the sinful things they say, because of the evil that is on their lips, let them be captured by their pride. Their curses and their lies, destroy them in your anger. Wipe them out completely. Then the whole world will know that God reigns in Israel. My enemies come out at night, snarling like vicious dogs. As they prowl the streets, they scavenge for food, but go to sleep unsatisfied. But as for me, I will sing about your power. Each morning I will sing with joy about your unfailing love. For you have been my refuge, a place of safety when I am in distress. O my strength, to you I sing praises. For you, O God, are my refuge, the God who shows me unfailing love. David escapes to Rama, 1 Samuel 19, 18 through 24. So David escaped and went to Rama to see Samuel, and he told him all that Saul had done. Then Samuel took David with him to live at Naioth. When the report reached Saul that David was at Naioth in Rama, he sent troops to capture him. But when they arrived and saw Samuel leading a group of prophets who were prophesying, the Spirit of God came upon Saul's men, and they also began to prophesy. When Saul heard what had happened, he sent other troops, but they too prophesied. The same thing happened a third time. Finally, Saul himself went to Rama and arrived at the great well in Succoth. Where are Samuel and David? He demanded. They are at Naioth in Rama, someone told him. But on the way to Naioth in Rama, the Spirit of God came even upon Saul, and he too began to prophesy all the way to Naioth. He tore off his clothes and lay naked on the ground all day and night, prophesying in the presence of Samuel. The people who were watching exclaimed, "What? Is even Saul a prophet?" All right, that's it. April 14th. Of course, it's longer than most days just because I overslept by, a whole hour and have to hurry. But that was good. I love that story. I've always enjoyed it. I'm always blown away by the words out of David's mouth, and they hit me in the face like a ton of bricks. That the way he just said, you know what? God is in charge of this, not me. So, and he just goes and knocks down the giant. I just love that. I just love it. I wish we could all have faith to knock down the giants in our life like that. All right, I'm going to go upstairs. I'm literally going to make the world's quickest breakfast. I'm going to make a cup of coffee with some fat and some protein in it, because that's what I do when I'm in a real hurry and I've overslept. So I might as well do it on video if I'm going to do it. So, all right, you guys, I love you all. I'm sorry for my deep, sexy voice this morning. I'll see you all upstairs for a super quick breakfast that I promise will be super, I always say super quick, and it's like 45 minutes, but it won't be 45 minutes. All right, I love you all. Have a blessed Wednesday, and I will see you back for more devotions tomorrow. Bye, guys.